So today we're reviewing Guardians of the Galaxy, the game. It's a very fun action adventure game. Very undernoticed. It was probably one of my favorite games this year. Um, it's really unfortunate about how, with the Avengers being so bad, that it really sort of ruined this game's chance. Like it was like one out of the developers of this game are like one out of six of the developers who made uh, the Avengers mess, you know, and of course six developers probably part why that game failed. This game really captures the feel of the movies. Um, really like that. Although it's not the same, but I'll get a bit into that a bit later. Uh, the gameplay is really good. It's similar to Star Wars, Bounty Hunter, or the old Tomb Raider games, I believe, were like that as well. Which is pretty unique for today. Fun sort of auto-lock shooting. Has a good feel to it. There's a solid jumping and dodging with the jet boots. There's good light Arkham style combat sort of thrown in there a bit. It works well within the game even though it's a bit slow. That's for the melee. Ordering the other Guardians is fun and is a surprisingly good way of playing as all the Guardians at once. The element guns and Star-Lord's specials are also fun. There's decent enemy variety, although when it comes to the non-humanoid enemies, they're not quite, don't feel as good to fight for some reason. There's decent boss fights. The cinematic moments aren't very good. That's a bit disappointing. This is a bit clunky. The combat instances can be a bit repetitive, but the gameplay is good enough that it doesn't hit that hard. The structural level design is a bit bland sometimes. But sometimes it's actually pretty good when they use verticality well. The puzzles are decent, but there's a fair bit too many of them. Kind of feels like they're stretching the game out longer. The scales are fairly good, but it was a bit easy to get them all before the end of the game, I found. The equipment upgrades are also fairly good. There's good light decisions with like sort of light impacts on the story. That add a lot of flavor to the story. Since the characterization of Star was pretty good, did sort of want to make decisions in line with that. It sort of encourages that. Shows to lie a lot more in video games than I usually do in video games. The story's pretty good. The world is a lot like the movies. All there are like small differences. Like Gamora's a little less serious and Drax is a little more serious. It really does capture the feel of the movie's world and the characters. The main characters are good like the movies, and they're really dived into here. There's also a lot of good, fun, interesting side characters. There's an interesting theme about accepting loss, and there's some actually fairly dark and intense moments that aren't undercut by humor. And speaking of humor, I think the humor is pretty good, but it is MCU humor. So if you don't like that, you probably won't like the humor in this game. Although I'm fine with it because I think that like that the MCU humor, they usually like throw all the jokes at the wall, and they don't expect all of them to be hilarious. And the ones that aren't hilarious are more just keeping the light mood. The villains are decent, but they're yet another video game cult. There's quite a bit of a trope in games, I find. They are better than most video game cults because they're actually more sympathetic. Star-Lord's voice acting is good, but it does feel a bit off. I looked it up, apparently he's Canadian, so now I can't unhear that. The stakes are really good and fit in with the movie and allow you to explore the great, colorful 60s comic book sci-fi world made by the films. All the interesting Star Wars like world they got there. The music is great, fits in with the music you hear on the radio a lot, type music, as in the movies, but this time it's in the 80s. This may be the best soundtrack of the year. There's also some original music by a fictional band called Star-Lord, which is still decent. The animations are overall good, and Star-Lords do match his fighting style in the movie, so that's pretty good and interesting. There's a lot of good overall details. Like if you're in a social area and you press the fire button, she'll do finger guns. A lot of like small snippets like that. The game does take a bit to pick up. I say it's until you start fighting humanoid enemies, which is about 2-3 hours in the game. It sounds a lot, but it's really worth it, I'd say. And it's not completely awful until then. There's a fair bit of glitches and a few frame rate issues. I did play on Xbox One, but I think I heard some stuff about it otherwise. There was nothing too horrible I almost lost my save once, and also this part near the beginning where you had to jump after a slide, and it kind of pulls you down a bit. Other than that, it's pretty good. Overall, this is a really good, fun, well-rounded, unique game. I'm giving it a 9.02. Thank you to anyone who likes, comments, or subscribes.